In the continent's greatest nation, the Alliop Empire, divine beasts are said to exist. These sacred animals, bestowed by the gods, are revered and feared by the Empire's people, particularly those associated with the 4 ducal houses that possess them. Each house is represented by a unique crest: a majestic phoenix, a serene sea turtle, a fierce tiger, and a vigilant fox, symbolizing the power and prestige of their respective families. However, approximately 500 years after the Empire's founding, House Moonrafe, one of these 4 prominent houses, inexplicably incurred the wrath of its divine beast. For reasons unknown, the divine beast abandoned House Moonrafe forever. In a somber response to this catastrophic event, the reigning Duke of Moonrafe assumed full responsibility for the loss and was subsequently confined to a solitary tower, standing under a starry night sky. Consequently, his young son, Edinburgh Moonrafe, inherited the ducal title, stepping into a role burdened by his family's past. House Moonrafe's prestige has steadily declined without a divine beast, leading to widespread demands for their ducal title to be revoked. The common sentiment is that House Moonrafe is utterly doomed. Many question the legitimacy of a ducal house that lacks a divine beast, with others declaring that they are no longer one of the 4 dukes, but merely one of 3, effectively stripping them of their status. However, the Emperor, taking pity on the young Duke Edinburgh Moonrafe, who is seen kneeling respectfully on a grand red carpet in a majestic hall, steps in and presents an alternative. The Emperor, seen from behind in his royal attire, extends his hand, proposing the summoning of an ancient creature to serve as a replacement for the missing divine beast. Below a towering dark structure, various nobles gather, their gazes fixed upwards, awaiting the summoning. Amidst the crowd, some voices express concern, questioning if such a summoning isn't far too dangerous. Another figure reiterates the daunting prospect of summoning an ancient creature. A pragmatic voice responds, asserting that regardless of the danger, there is no other choice, as the imperial court has already granted its permission. Still, one person nervously ponders the unsettling possibility of something truly strange emerging from the summoning. The summoner, a cloaked figure wielding an elaborate staff, addresses Edinburgh Moonrafe, proposing they begin the summoning ritual. Edinburgh, his expression resolute, affirms the decision. Internally, he believes that all the humiliation his house has endured will finally come to an end today. He reflects that he must seize this last chance granted by the imperial court. With fierce determination, Edinburgh vows that no matter what kind of beast emerges, he will subdue it and claim it as his divine beast, thereby restoring the honor of his house without fail. Edinburgh's foot steps onto a glowing magic circle, and with a swift motion, he draws his sword, commanding the assembled armored soldiers to prepare themselves for the upcoming challenge. A summoner dramatically calls forth an ancient creature, conjuring a potent magic circle that glows with intense purple energy. Edinburgh Moonrafe observes, overwhelmed by the energy emanating from the summoning ritual, questioning just how massive the creature will be. A brilliant flash of light engulfs the area as the ancient creature finally emerges, announcing its arrival with a small, adorable squeak. The newly summoned creature, a small dragon-like being, looks around slightly dazed and confused, uttering another soft sound. The small creature emits a soft sound. Edinburgh Moonrafe, sword in hand, observes it, wondering if this being truly is weak. His armored guards appear perplexed, one questioning if this tiny entity is indeed the ancient creature they were sent to confront, noting its surprisingly small and cute appearance. Edinburgh sternly warns them not to lower their guard, suspecting the creature might use its innocent facade to lure them before striking. Pi responds with a questioning chirp, then promptly falls asleep. One of the guards expresses confusion over the unexpected turn of events as P continues to make soft, sleepy noises. Elsewhere, a woman named Alara, who was peacefully napping in a lush garden with P nestled beside her, stirs. She wonders if she is still half asleep or if the situation she finds herself in is a dream, having just woken from a nap. Pi is then shown rubbing its eyes, letting out another soft sound as it wakes. P lets out a pained cry, drawing Edinburgh Moonrafe's immediate concern. He wonders what P is doing, observing the small creature as it lies on the ground, visibly hurt and whimpering that it truly hurts. P continues to voice its distress, uttering soft cries. P continues to lament its pain, then cries out loudly in distress. Pia, witnessing P's intense suffering, Edinburgh Moonrafe realizes with alarm that this dire situation is undeniably real, not a dream. Meanwhile, a group of figures in purple robes on a higher platform react with shouts of terror, perceiving Pi as a monstrous threat. Edinburgh Moonrafe grips his sword, mentally steeling himself for battle. He sternly reminds himself to remain calm and maintain control. P continues to whimper piteously. Edinburgh Moonrafe finds the situation strange, noting that he cannot detect the familiar aura of a beastkin like Ashel's from P. even as P lets out another soft sound of distress. The little beastkin, Ashel, observes the figures before her, realizing with dawning horror that they are not beastkin in human form, but real humans. The very beings she has only ever read about in books. Overwhelmed, Ashel is shocked by this revelation. Historically, humans were greatly feared among beastkin, seen as devils capable of devouring them whole. However, Ashel, thanks to her unusual mother, possessed a different understanding. Ashel's mother tenderly addresses her daughter, explaining that Ashel is destined to be summoned by this world's male lead. Ashel, in her pie form, inquires about this male lead. Her mother clarifies that he is the boy fated to wipe out all beastkin. She adds with a sigh that Ashel, unfortunately, is destined to be a mere extra, summoned and subsequently killed by him. Ashel, confused, repeats the terms male lead and extra. Her mother, noticing Ashel becoming sleepy, gently reassures her not to worry. She advises that even as an extra, playing her first role well could ensure her survival. The mother confidently states that by following her teachings, Ashel can change the story. Ashel, still processing, questions further. Her mother then begins to outline their plan, starting with the male lead's almost certain dark past. A guiding voice explains that if Alara comforts the boy well, he will become her ally. P quietly acknowledges this instruction. The voice continues, stating that Alara will then need to mend the rift between the boy and his father, as they are almost guaranteed to be at odds. After that, the text in the memory becomes illegible against the bright sky. The voice then asserts that if Alara does that much, the boy will eventually ask her to call him husband. Alara, holding P in her lap, questions this, asking, "Husband?" The voice adds that the boy's father will then ask her to call him father-in-law, prompting Alara to again question the notion, father-in-law. The voice delivers a crucial warning: Alara must remember she is of a different kind and must never accept such proposals. Instead, she will have to gracefully pass the boy on to the human heroine. Pi looks up, startled by the implications of this task, as Alara's voice softly calls out his name. A warm, glowing image of Alara's mother appears, reassuring her daughter that she is smart and understood the instructions, asking, "Right?" As P peacefully sleeps on her lap, Alara reflects on the past, regretting that she did not listen to her mother back then. P, observing the scene, looks up, then defiantly states that he remembers two things, asserting that it is because Ashel is smart. Edinburgh Moonrafe takes the lead, brandishing a sword. A voice in the background loudly proclaims that this human boy is none other than Ashel's husband. Edinburgh Moonrafe, full of righteous anger, commands the small creature before him to surrender, declaring it a monster surrounded by his forces. The internal monologue continues, emphasizing the boy's relationship. Not only is he Ashel's husband, but his father is Ashel's father-in-law. The target of their aggression, P, a small dragon-like creature, cries out in distress, desperately calling out the name, while the soldiers observe. One of the soldiers questions whether they should attack, as another expresses pity for the creature, finding its cries of P truly heartbreaking. P, tearful and confused, seems unable to comprehend their words, lost in a memory. He recalls a past lesson from his teacher about a white handkerchief, remembering how even without words, communication is possible. His teacher had instructed him to wave a white handkerchief when encountering humans, a clear sign that he has no intention to attack. He then demonstrated, and P had mimicked the action. P snaps back to the present, realizing that this was a lesson learned in kindergarten. Determined, he confidently raises a white handkerchief towards the approaching soldiers. The small dragon P flails frantically in the air, crying out its name in distress. Pia Piku Pia. Tears stream down its face as it desperately declares, "Hick." Ashel surrenders. Recognizing the escalating tension, Edinburgh Moonrafe sternly commands his guards to stay alert, and warns them not to drop your guard. Something big is coming. Wary of the creature's unusual behavior, questions if the cursed monster is performing some kind of hexing dance. P continues its desperate cries of PPI, ya, its tiny wings beating in pure terror. One guard observes that the creature appears to be waving a white flag, and another wonders if this signifies its surrender. Edinburgh Moonrafe looks closer, noting the piece of eggshell still on its head, realizing it is so tiny it must still be a baby. He questions if it can even understand them. Ashel, identified in the narration, continues to cry, letting out soft whimpers as it holds up a small white cloth in surrender. Edinburgh tells Ashel to stop crying, assuring it he understands what it's trying to convey. Ashel lets out a small, confused hiccup as Edinburgh ponders if the surrender is truly for Ashel. Ashel sniffs the air, finding the scent surprisingly good. He reconsiders his earlier fears, wondering if his husband isn't actually trying to eat him. Meanwhile, Kai, a young man with blonde hair and purple eyes, asks Edinburgh Moonrafe, the hooded figure, if he could cast a translation spell on what Kai refers to as a monster. Edinburgh confirms that it is possible. A powerful magical staff, glowing intensely with mystical energy, is then activated, causing Ashel to cry out in distress. Edinburgh inquires what the creature is saying, to which Leo, a man in a dark suit standing nearby, confidently asserts that it is obviously begging for its life. Leo then muses on whether something so small could truly evolve into a divine beast, as Ashel continues to cry out in fear. Kai, observing the scene, inwardly addresses Edinburgh as husband, before stating aloud that Ashel doesn't taste good, leaving the little creature visibly teary-eyed. A gentle voice pleads for Ashel's safety, asking that the creature not be consumed. Meanwhile, in a grand, opulent hall, an aide humbly apologizes for his impudence as he addresses his young master. The aide suggests that the newly summoned creature is far too small to serve as the young lord's divine beast, proposing they request permission from the imperial palace to perform the summoning ritual again. The young lord, a boy with blonde hair and sharp purple eyes, counters by reminding the aide of the exorbitant cost already paid to the imperial palace for this summoning. He emphasizes the precarious financial state their family would face if they were to re-summon a divine beast. As the small dark, winged creature, Ashel, is gently wheeled in on a cart by attendants, the aide questions if this tiny being, affectionately called Ki, could truly be a divine beast. He protests, but the young lord cradles Ashel, dismissing the aide's concerns. He asserts that it is not too late to make a decision, after they have had a chance to confirm what abilities the little creature possesses. Figures approach a grand, ornate golden door. Pi, held securely by Edinburgh Moonrafe, internally panics, questioning what he should do as he fears Edinburgh intends to roast him whole. Edinburgh then addresses P directly, instructing him to call him master, not husband, but offers the alternative of using his name if P prefers. P, still apprehensive, hesitantly repeats a sound like Ki, to which Edinburgh reveals his name as Edenver. P, processing this, recalls tales of humans barbarically roasting young beastmen whole. He deduces that by revealing his name, Edinburgh likely has no immediate intention of eating him, a realization that brings a surge of relief and causes P to leap joyfully. Pi then confidently states the name Ashel is Ashel, which Edinburgh confirms. Edinburgh Moonrafe pointedly asks what Pi is capable of, prompting a questioning Ki from the little creature. Edinburgh then internally muses about powerful abilities, imagining someone wielding magic capable of destroying an entire duchy or possessing immense physical strength. Pi then looks at a vision of an angelic figure healing an injured man, eliciting a soft "Kia" from it, while Edinburgh considers if Pi possesses the power of healing. Edinburgh asks Pi what it can do, to which Pi responds by shaking its head. Edinburgh then wonders if Pi has the power to see the future, but Pi shakes its head again. Frustrated, Edinburgh repeats his question, then, what can you do? Ashel eagerly declares its abilities, demonstrating its skill at climbing trees, and then proudly proclaims to be a good swimmer, diving into the water with an excited "Kia." Watching Ashel's enthusiastic but seemingly mundane display, Edinburgh feels a wave of despair, thinking to himself that he is completely screwed. Edinburgh Moonrafe clasps his head in distress, realizing something has gone terribly wrong. The small dragon P looks equally startled by the turn of events. Edinburgh internally questions what he should possibly do, while P, overwhelmed with fear, thinks it doesn't want to become a roasted baby. Pi nervously tugs at its small white scarf, visibly anxious. Edinburgh leans over the balcony railing, lost in thought, even recalling that Ashel possesses a good singing voice. Suddenly, P speaks, earnestly pleading that it doesn't taste good and begging him not to eat it, before startling Edinburgh by addressing him as husband. Edinburgh's face flushes as he vehemently shouts that he is not its husband. P's eyes well up with tears, and it begins to wail loudly in distress. This emphasizes that the summoning was already a failure, questioning if things could possibly get any worse. Edinburgh appears utterly exasperated, pinching the bridge of his nose while P continues to look up at him with tear-filled eyes. Finally, with a look of complete resignation, Edinburgh tells Pi to do whatever it wants. A knock sounds at Edinburgh Moonrafe's door as a servant announces that he has brought the meal as commanded. Edinburgh Moonrafe permits him to enter, noting that he had them prepare a meal in case Pi, the monster, went berserk from hunger. He cynically wonders if it even matters if P goes berserk at this point. As the servant places a covered dish on the table, Edinburgh Moonrafe wonders what it could be. P gasps in utter astonishment as the cover is lifted, revealing a tiny, white rabbit nestled on a bed of fresh lettuce. Edinburgh Moonrafe exclaims in surprise, realizing it is a rabbit. Observing P's stunned reaction, Edinburgh Moonrafe asks if the rabbit is too small. He then offers to have them bring a bigger one if it's not enough, reassuring Pi that he won't take it and encouraging P to eat comfortably. Edinburgh Moonrafe then thoughtfully considers whether he should add a little seasoning. Ashel's little mind struggles, thinking that Edinburgh isn't supposed to eat rabbit friends. Edinburgh, holding out food, urges Ashel to eat, wondering why it's not indulging. Internally, Ashel trembles, concluding that humans truly are dangerous creatures and must escape immediately. With a desperate cry, Ashel attempts to leap out of a grand window, but misses, falling to the floor. Edinburgh rushes forward, exclaiming that the action is dangerous. Ashel lands, forming a new plan. As long as it can get out of this warded room, it can return home. Ashel races across the ornate floor, intending to use return magic to reach the forest of beastmen once through the door. Reaching the imposing golden door, Ashel realizes the doorknob is far too high and laments that it doesn't know how to fly yet. With small, determined leaps and grunts, Ashel strains, wishing it could reach just a little higher, just a little more. The small, dark creature P lies on the floor, letting out soft, distressed cries. Ashel observes P, pondering its behavior, and concluding that it is far too wild to be a true divine beast. Suddenly, someone calls out to Ashel, causing Pi to exclaim in surprise. P quickly realizes it needs to escape before being captured, longing to return to the forest of beastmen where its mother resides. With newfound determination, P begins to glow intensely with vibrant pink and red energy. The room fills with a brilliant, swirling light emanating from Pi as the creature undergoes a powerful transformation, leaving even P itself momentarily stunned by the sudden change. Chaos erupts as an unseen observer wonders why the door suddenly flew away, while another person reacts in stunned disbelief, realizing the incredibly durable orichalcum door has been utterly destroyed. Amidst the swirling dust, Alara stares at Ashel, incredulously asking if he just breathed fire. Ashel, tears streaming down his face, silently panics, distressed that he didn't mean to break the door. Then has a horrifying thought the boy's father might roast Ashel into a baby dragon barbecue. In the opulent grand hall, servants are abuzz, wondering what caused the commotion in the middle of the night. One servant exclaims, incredulously asking if the tiny monster truly broke through the orichalcum gate. His colleague confirms it, stating that the creature genuinely managed the impossible. A third servant, looking astonished, muses about the sheer strength the monster must possess. Suddenly, a young boy Edinburgh appears at the threshold, carrying Ashel. Edinburgh sternly informs Ashel that he will be staying there until the construction is complete. Ashel looks surprised by this decree, then apologetically murmurs an, "I'm sorry." Edinburgh gently sets Ashel down on the polished floor. Ashel, now sitting beside P, calls out to the rabbit friend with a soft, concerned "P." The little dragon then inwardly expresses relief, grateful that he did not end up roasted, and that his rabbit friend is still alive. A burst of magical energy emanates from Ashel as he puffs up with renewed confidence, concluding that perhaps the humans were simply scared, because the great Ashel is in fact a powerful dragon. P laments that the mana density in the human world is far too weak, making it impossible to cast the spell necessary to return home. They resign themselves to surviving without getting eaten until their mother arrives to pick them up. Pi begins searching through a room filled with scattered toys, recalling a specific book they borrowed with their mom from the library. With a triumphant cry, P finds the book, titled, How to Survive When You Encounter a Human, all in one volume. Clutching the guide, P declares that with this, they will never be eaten. As P reads, the book advises against fighting, suggesting instead to run immediately and report to an adult beastkin. P, however, realizes there are no adult beastkin in the human world. The book also recommends waving a white handkerchief to signal peaceful intentions, but P recalls having already attempted that strategy. Suddenly, P looks utterly startled, their eyes wide with shock. Humans, the narration observes, are inherently cowardly, weak when faced with strength, yet cruel and oppressive towards those weaker than themselves. It is a harsh assessment, but one that underpins a vital lesson for young beastkin. Even if one cannot ultimately stand victorious, one must never surrender to fear. Instead, they are encouraged to project an image of ferocity, ensuring that humans will never dare to look down upon beastkin children. In this spirit, the small dragon P, as if having mastered this very art, P stamps a tiny foot, letting out small, determined squeaks of bi and biy, followed by a louder pi, attempting to sound formidable. Pi then points to a nearby, slightly larger beastkin, eyes glowing with fierce determination, as if channeling the very essence of Ashel's power. Having heard of a monster's summoning, insists on seeing it for himself and questions his aide, Leo, about why he wasn't informed sooner. Leo explains that the Duke had ordered them to keep it a secret until everything was settled, to which Elkai expresses his annoyance, finding the situation a pain. As he walks, Elkai wonders if the dangerous monster is truly here. Meanwhile, P and Alara cower by a bed, sensing the approaching footsteps. P observes Leo, recognizing him as the aide from yesterday, but wonders about the identity of the blonde man. Elkai then leans down, telling Alara, "Hey Bunny, get up." In a separate scene, Elkai dismisses the idea of a thing being dangerous, while Ashel notes to herself that he looks just like her husband. P, feeling tiny and vulnerable, mentally declares that there is no meat on him. He desperately thinks that even if his perceived father-in-law Elkai were to eat him, Elkai would still be hungry. P goes on to plead that his bunny friend also tastes bad, trying to deter any predatory intentions. Elkai, however, is indignant and bewildered, questioning why he would be P's father-in-law and asserting he never had a daughter-in-law like P. P, now confused, wonders aloud about Elkai's response, silently reasoning that Elkai is indeed her husband's father, and sensing that something is amiss. A door opens, and Edinburgh greets them upon their arrival, apologizing for not meeting them at the gates, and explaining they would have done so if word had been sent. Elkai dismisses the apology, stating that more importantly, despite his long life, this is the first time he has heard something so absurd, still clearly troubled by P's earlier comments. The great Duke Elkai Moonrafe, an older man with a distinguished mustache, finds himself utterly bewildered, silently questioning why this tiny creature P claims to be his daughter-in-law. Meanwhile, Edinburgh, the blonde-haired man with purple eyes, looks on with a confused expression, asking for clarification. P, realizing the mistake, internally exclaims that this man is not her father-in-law. Her thoughts race, connecting this situation to that human, the one her mother warned her about. Her memory flashes back to a vibrant, sunny landscape where her mother once cautioned her, stating that there is a human she must be most careful of when she goes there. Young Pi had innocently questioned her mother, who then revealed the name Elkai Moonrafe. He is described as the male lead's grandfather and the great Duke of the Moonrafe line. P recalls her knowledge from the original story, where Elkai disliked Ashel simply for resembling a wyvern. P inwardly frets, realizing she is not a wyvern either. She further remembers that Elkai is afflicted with an unknown illness, which only exacerbates his already volatile temper. The current situation dawns on her with dread as she realizes he has just gotten truly angry upon seeing her. Ashel reflects on an event from yesterday, stating that he breathed fire. P, in his small dragon form, ponders if there are dragons incapable of breathing fire, noting that it was his first time exhaling such a massive flame. He recalls the powerful blaze he unleashed, completely shattering the Orichalcum gate. Edinburgh looks on, visibly shocked, wondering what just happened. P, feeling the intense glare from his grandfather, thinks he looks incredibly angry. The tiny dragon fears he will be turned into grilled meat, and lets out a frantic scream. Edinburgh observes Pi thoughtfully, concluding that despite appearing to be a pathetic speck, P is worth confirming something about. P, in turn, reacts with indignation to being called a pathetic speck. Pi is visibly agitated, stomping its tiny foot in frustration and letting out a furious cry. It declares with intense anger that someone has dared to insult dragons, radiating purple energy. Ashel resolves that it must now demonstrate just how truly ferocious it can be. Meanwhile, Grandpa Elkai dismisses the commotion, wondering why such a speck is making a fuss, while Edinburgh attempts to calm the situation, advising him to not mind it. Pi, however, becomes even more incensed upon hearing itself called a speck. Once more, its stomping growing more insistent. Ashel realizes that Grandpa Elkai is severely underestimating its power. With a sudden burst of inspiration, Ashel devises a plan. It will emulate the black dragon from the old fairy tales, kidnap Grandpa Elkai, and teach him a valuable lesson. Transforming into a larger, more imposing dragon form with glowing purple eyes, P confidently warns Grandpa Elkai to prepare himself, as the older man sits on the floor, looking up at the now formidable dragon. The objective is clear: Ashel's grandfather kidnapping operation, with P ready to help. Ashel cautiously peeks out, followed by Pi, as they quietly enter a grand room, beginning Operation 1: Gather Information. Meanwhile, two men walk through a hallway. One, with dark hair and a red tie, asks if Elkai truly said what he heard. The other, with blonde hair and a brown tie, reveals his belief that Elkai dislikes him, thinking it's because he is small and insignificant. He recalls Elkai calling him Booger or something similar. Overhearing this, Ashel's thoughts immediately declare, Booger. That's perfect. However, his mood quickly sours as he realizes Ashel became a laughingstock because of Grandfather. With an enraged expression, Ashel fumes, vowing to punish Grandfather quickly. As P looks on, Ashel, the little dragon, adamantly tells Pi, the rabbit, not to stop him, while P makes a soft, protesting sound. Internally notes that while the Duke appears to dislike strawberries, he did request the freshest ones, implying a hidden fondness. Edinburgh then sighs over the precious strawberries he was tasked to acquire. Ashel, hearing this, immediately thinks of strawberries with wide, sparkling eyes and a hint of drool, imagining they are specifically prepared for him. He fondly recalls the previous sweet and delicious strawberries, wondering if even tastier ones exist. However, Ashel quickly snaps himself back to reality, declaring that strawberries are not important right now. Yet, despite his resolve, he dejectedly mutters booger and continues to scribble drawings, his thoughts still drifting back to strawberries as P watches him, looking confused. Following this interaction, Ashel and his rabbit companion P embark on a mission. For several days, the Duke meticulously searches every corner of the estate, diligently continuing to gather information. P confidently declares that the collected information is sufficient, and he now simply needs to wait in his room for the right opportunity, his determined expression hinting at a carefully laid plan. However, P's perfect plan is swiftly ruined when he realizes Ashel has lost her notebook. Utterly devastated, P collapses to the floor, lamenting that everything is ruined, while Edinburgh looks on with concern, letting out a soft, "Q-ho." Meanwhile, an aide named Leo addresses Duke Elkai Moonrafe, presenting him with a small, rectangular object on a tray. Leo explains that a servant found it earlier that morning during her cleaning duties. Elkai questions what the object is, and Leo suggests that, judging by its size, it appears Ashel might have dropped it. Elkai then asks where it was found, to which Leo responds that it was discovered in the hallway while cleaning the west parlor, a location specified as being on the opposite side of Ashel's room. The young boy, Edinburgh, hesitates for a moment before deciding it is acceptable to peek just a little. He discovers Ashel's notebook, noting the heartwarming heart drawn on its cover. While he cannot decipher the writing within, the pages are filled with Ashel's cheerful, childlike drawings of figures, a rainbow, trees and animals, suggesting she has been quite active. Edinburgh smiles softly, feeling immense relief that Ashel seems to be adjusting well to her new environment. The scene then shifts to a majestic castle under a tumultuous lightning-filled sky as the narrative reflects on Ashel's recent kidnapping attempt. Pi, the little dragon, appears utterly dejected, lamenting the miserable failure of the operation, which resulted in the loss of her precious notebook. Observing P's downcast demeanor, Edinburgh wonders if the rain is the cause, remarking that she looks dispirited. Suddenly, Pi emits a soft beep and reflects on her grandfather's suggestion that they eat together, hoping this shared meal might provide her with some valuable information. P excitedly announces the presence of fresh strawberries. Elkai Moonrafe observes the scene, his thoughts drifting to strawberries, as he concludes his worries were for nothing. A lavish spread of desserts, all featuring strawberries, draws exclamations of WOA from an unseen voice, marveling that all of that is strawberries. And the narration reveals that Ashel has fainted from joy. Kai, now holding the unconscious Ashel, remarks, "Indeed," and mentally adds that upon closer inspection Ashel really does look like a trivial booger. Ashel quickly regains consciousness and, startled, Elkai Moonrafe immediately defends his companion, emphatically stating that Ashel is not a booger. Leo then interjects, advising them not to talk about boogers dirtily at the dinner table. As Ashel floats angrily between the two men, P fumes, reminding everyone that her grandfather was the first one to talk about boogers. The Duke, observing her outburst, remarks on her rudeness with a stern expression. Kai, looking anxious with a bead of sweat on his brow, internally questions if it is truly necessary to keep watching such a scene. He muses that P is not usually so stubborn, attributing her behavior to the rain. Addressing the Duke, Kai requests a little more time, explaining that he wants to make a careful decision. The Duke responds with understanding, signaling his approval. Kai then expresses his determination to do well, promising that he will not disappoint the Duke. As P continues to devour a pastry with gusto, even drooling with satisfaction, the Duke observes her, silently questioning how such a glutton could be a divine beast candidate. He reflects on the family's desire to regain its former power, then notes, perhaps with a hint of resigned amusement, that P certainly eats quite heartily. Elora questions Pi, asking how long the creature intends to keep eating with such fervor as P greedily devours a strawberry. Elora then muses aloud that it is raining today, preventing her from taking a walk in the garden. She decides she was planning to go out tomorrow anyway, intending to enjoy the autumn leaves before winter arrives. Pi, overhearing this, excitedly thinks about joining the garden walk as well. However, Duke Elkai interjects, telling Alara there is no need for her to exert herself. He reveals he heard she works late every day and advises her to get enough sleep. Alara respectfully acknowledges his words, stating that she understands. Pi then makes a startling deduction, realizing that grandfather Duke Elkai takes a walk early in the morning. With a triumphant expression, Pi, now comically dressed as a detective, declares that Ashel's deduction skills are amazing. P then announces Operation 2. Its new mission is to ambush and watch for an opportunity to kidnap. 10 days later, Duke Elkai walks through a vibrant garden with Leo, his dark-haired associate. Leo remarks that Duke Elkai looks well, to which Elkai replies, "Well, hardly." Elkai then thinks of a particular creature, noting that he initially mistook it for a baby wyvern, but upon closer inspection, it appeared to be a mutant lizard hatchling. Leo acknowledges this with a thoughtful "I see," musing that a small reptile would make sense. Elkai describes the creature Ashel as it munches on a strawberry, detailing how it nibbles with a face smaller than his hand. Leo observes quietly as Elkai continues, eventually admitting that despite everything, Ashel is cheerful. Elkai then recounts how even his grandson, Edinburgh Moonrafe, always addresses him as Lord Elkai, yet this little creature calls him grandfather. Ashel, in a crib, confirms this by gleefully proclaiming grandfather rather than father. Amused, Elkai wonders about the eggshell Ashel still wears on its head, jokingly asking if it's saving it for soup. He smiles broadly, concluding that Ashel is, anyway, an amusing little thing, and laughs heartily. A young man observes the Duke, reflecting on how the elder once questioned the origin of such creatures, yet has now grown so fond of them. He muses that perhaps it is due to the Duke having spent more than half his life on the battlefield, leading to a distant relationship with his own children, and his only grandson, Lord Edinburgh, maturing far too early. He concludes that the Duke must have no immunity to cuteness, even if the creature in question is just a lizard. He then questions his aide about Kai's whereabouts. The aide informs him that Kai promised to arrive after finishing his current tasks. The Duke, however, dismisses this, declaring Kai has no sense of priority, despite his title as an elder of the family. He reveals that Kai is rumored to have summoned an ancient monster and has yet to show his face. Annoyed, the Duke orders his aide to tell Kai to depart at once, regardless of what he is doing. The aide confirms the instruction. Suddenly, the Duke's attention is captured as P, a small imp-like creature, dashes towards him, calling out, "Grandfather." The Duke smiles, clearly delighted. The Duke suddenly halts, calling out to Ashel and asking him to come along for a moment. Ashel, a small, adorable dragon, stops in his tracks, looking surprised as he twitches his ears. The Duke, seeing Ashel's unspoken question, simply states that Ashel will understand if he comes along. Meanwhile, a young attendant Leo is shocked by the Duke's casual request, exclaiming in disbelief, wondering how anyone could speak to Lord Elkai in such a manner. The Duke, however, turns to Leo and sternly orders him to stay put. Leo, flustered, meekly responds with a "Why, yes," as the Duke warns him that he will be punished if he was called there for no reason. The Duke then reiterates the importance of the situation to Ashel and instructs him not to go anywhere else, as the small dragon clings to his leg. Internally, the Duke reminds himself to stay close and follow Ashel, even as he humorously thinks, yeah, just walk straight, unsure of who is truly following whom. Leo, observing the scene, can't help but be charmed, thinking to himself how ridiculously cute Ashel is, and how he would spoil such a little lizard if he had one. A door slides open to reveal Pi, who triumphantly announces that they have succeeded in kidnapping grandfather. Meanwhile, Kai angrily questions why it matters to him that Lord Edinburgh summoned some weak monster. He wishes the monster had been bitten to death, having heard that a very weak one was summoned. He clenches his hand, stating that if it cannot become a divine beast anyway, they should have just killed it. Kai, visibly frustrated, demands to know why he was called, emphasizing that he is busy building connections to help secure the dukedom. He then looks up, seriously asking if they are not truly planning to make that thing a divine beast. Lord Edinburgh dismisses a notion, but an advisor, Aaron, reports on a summoned monster that reportedly breathed a great flame, garnering significant attention. Aaron confirms the report of a great flame, and cautiously adds a persistent rumor the monster supposedly broke an orichalcum gate with its bare hands. Lord Edinburgh scoffs at the idea, finding it absurd that orichalcum, which can withstand explosions without a scratch, could be broken by bare hands. Aaron concedes it sounds like a rumor, but emphasizes it cannot be entirely dismissed because the Divine Beast Chamber is currently undergoing major renovations. He further explains that without a Divine Beast, the chamber's management has become lax. Lord Edinburgh, with a confident smirk, remarks that such sloppiness in maintaining the fortress is to be expected from someone young. Aaron enthusiastically agrees, asserting that truly, someone like their lord should hold the title of Duke. A hand clenches in frustration as Kai wishes his father possessed even half the discernment of his current interlocutor. He reflects on his past, bitterly acknowledging that he should have realized from the start that his brother, Edinburgh Moonrafe, despite being merely handsome and competent, would be made the next Duke. Kai laments that he should have been appointed Duke instead, asserting that at least then, the title would have gone to him. His resentment intensifies at the thought of the title being bestowed upon his young nephew, House Moonrafe. Furious, Kai demands to know why his family is always prioritized, asserting that he, too, is his father's child. Taking a determined step, Kai then muses aloud that a certain monster was said to resemble a wyvern. Eren confirms this, describing it as a lizard that merely looks like a wyvern. Eren explains that Kai's father refuses to draw his sword against it, having spent his entire life hunting wyverns to the point where the mere mention of the word makes him sick of it. Kai expresses concern that he might be blamed for killing the divine beast, to which Eren, visibly startled, apologetically admits he hadn't considered that possibility. With a cunning smile, Kai clarifies his sinister plan, stating that if they kill the creature before it fully transforms into a divine beast, there should be no problem. Eren responds with a confused, "Huh." Kai then instructs him to send word that he will arrive soon and to first dispatch a fortress guardian. As Kai pours a glass of wine, he explains that since he cannot go immediately, he will send his guardian in his place. Eren expresses a sudden understanding. Kai continues, instructing Eren that when he reaches the fortress, it will be just like last time. Eren confirms his understanding. Kai then unveils the full scheme. They will stage a self-destruct and feign an escape, then release the guardian bear on the path that the lizard frequently uses. A voice expresses concern that the Duke might summon another monster after losing the current one. However, Kai confidently refutes this, stating that if the Duke had the necessary resources, he would have already done so. Kai sips his wine, a thoughtful hum escaping him. With a sinister smile, a magical aura glowing around his wine glass, he definitively declares that once they eliminate that specific monster, Lord Edinburgh's influence will be completely undone. Duke Elkai finds himself completely bound, his hands and feet secured by ropes. Ashel, the small devilish creature, proudly announces that everything is all tied up. He then excitedly explains his intention to show his grandfather, Duke, his fearsome side. However, Duke, looking utterly bewildered, begins to examine the ropes, questioning aloud why he is all wrapped up like this. Ashel immediately panics, vehemently pleading with his grandfather not to untie the ropes, and insisting that he worked hard to prepare the setup, a distressed look on his face. Frantically, Ashel huddles with P, the small white rabbit, whispering intensely. Duke observes the two conspirators suspiciously, wondering what they are whispering about. Unfazed by his grandfather's silent inquiry, Ashel then leaps onto Duke's lap, looking defiant. Duke sternly orders him to come down. Meanwhile, a hand reaches out, and the individual remarks there is plenty of room. The hand then gently touches Ashel, confirming this is Ashel's designated spot. The man, Ashel's grandfather, ponders the surprisingly soft texture of Ashel, noting it's far softer than he expected, especially compared to a wyvern's hide. Ashel then tells her grandfather to stay still, prompting him to agree. Ashel, perched happily on her grandfather's head, lets out soft bibby sounds. Her grandfather, delighted by her clear voice, thinks she will likely be a good singer. He later envisions her playing with a ball, finding the thought of watching her stumble with her short legs amusing. He also imagines her climbing trees and picking an acorn, expressing joy at the prospect. Ashel then observes that her grandfather has stopped moving. With newfound determination, Ashel decides she will now show her grandfather her ferocious side. Ashel excitedly calls out, before a maid arrives pushing a cart laden with treats. It's snack time, and Ashel is absolutely thrilled to see a basket of strawberries, eagerly thinking, "Grandfather, eat." Though the little dragon wants to devour them instantly, Ashel dutifully waits, recalling the teacher's lesson that adults must eat first, proving Ashel to be a fierce yet polite dragon. Ashel even tells a surprised rabbit that they must wait to eat later. Lord Edinburgh, taking a strawberry, agrees to try some, encouraging Ashel to eat as well. Ashel takes a massive bite, quickly devouring the strawberry in one go. Lord Edinburgh, after trying a piece himself, acknowledges that even though he doesn't typically like strawberries, these are quite good. Ashel looks up at the now empty basket, having enjoyed the snack. P clutches a basket of greens and cries out in distress, "No." It then walks alone down a grand, empty hallway, wishing to be by itself. P reflects on its actions, lamenting that it should not have kidnapped grandfather. Its thoughts drift, recalling how Ashel eats slowly due to her small mouth. It laments further that Ashel only received one strawberry, and therefore couldn't display her fearsome, scary dragon side. P's eyes well up with tears as it repeats, "Bibi," in its thoughts. Suddenly P overhears a conversation, learning that Count Kai's bear envoy is arriving soon, a serious matter. It peeks cautiously from behind a wall as the speaker recalls a previous incident where running outside nearly caused a major problem. Confused, P questions the mention of a beer, its small head poking out from a doorway. It wonders who Kai is and if the Duke can prevent him from entering the palace. Two maids are visible, one of whom expresses uncertainty, explaining that it would be difficult to block Count Kai's envoy. She advises caution for the time being. P, still listening intently, ponders if the bear friend is truly that scary. Its thoughts then shift to Ashel, considering what would happen if Ashel were to scold the very bear friend that humans fear. Someone muses that Pi will soon become an existence even scarier than the bear. Pi, in her small, adorable form, lets out a tiny exclamation, while internally vowing that this time, she will truly become a ferocious and terrifying dragon. A few days later, Count Kai's bear envoy arrives at the palace, bringing with it a sense of unease. Edinburgh warns Pi that his uncle's bear is dangerous, explaining that while it may seem calm because it is currently sleeping, it is always better to be careful. He insists that P should be accompanied by an escort knight. P silently rejects this idea, believing she can handle a bear friend on her own. Edinburgh then notices something has spilled. Elara, his mother, internally sighs, thinking her husband treats Ashel too much like a baby. Suddenly, a man's boot steps into view, and he greets them politely, identifying himself as the escort knight tasked with accompanying the divine beast. He then introduces himself, asking them to call him Dylan. Elara privately worries, realizing she summoned the escort knight and that he could be in danger. Someone reflects that Ashel doesn't need an escort, simply stating that Ashel is Ashel. Another voice agrees with Ashel, expressing anticipation for their collaboration. Ashel, in her chibi dragon form, then wonders aloud if it wouldn't be good to have a witness. She imagines a chibi version of a knight excitedly proclaiming that Ashel defeated a bear and was very ferocious towards it. Ashel, considering this, internally notes that if this human knight were to see her scold the bear, he would likely spread rumors that she is a terrifying dragon. She questions her own thought before observing the knight's visible distress, wondering why he is shaking so much and if he is cold. The knight Dylan internally screams about being a lizard's escort knight. He laments, having previously believed the Moonrafe Duke family offered the best workplace. A flashback image shows a younger, crying Dylan next to a lizard. He continues to despair, realizing he is now a lizard's escort knight despite suffering trauma from being bitten in the past. Dylan then comes to a grim conclusion. If he quits this job now, he might get kicked out of his family. Ashel, dressed in his knightly attire, instructs someone to call him anytime if needed, stating that he will be nearby at the training grounds. The small creature P then internally resolves to stay composed, seeing this as a chance to overcome its trauma. Pi thinks about how humans, except for its husband and grandfather, are still awkward, but it needs to become friendly if it wants to assign a witness role. Pi then confirms its understanding with an, "Alright? Got it." P watches Ashel's departing foot, hesitant. P then asks Ashel where he is going. Ashel replies, reassuring P not to worry about him and adding that wherever the knight goes, he goes. As it gazes intently at Ashel, whose figure is reflected in P's eyes, Ashel senses P stare and wonders why it is watching him, then again, more emphatically, do why. As P continues to follow close behind him. The narration explains that doing things together is important for fostering closeness, a principle Ashel exemplifies as she is always closest to her partner, even in Beast Kindergarten. Ashel, along with two other small, adorable creatures, appears to be diligently building something from blocks, working side by side. Suddenly, Ashel cries out, an energetic bee followed by a triumphant Baya. The male character, Dylan, looks on in utter shock as debris flies around him, indicating a powerful impact. Ashel, looking cheerfully active, floats near Dylan's leg, having seemingly caused the commotion. A large wooden beam crashes down, barely missing Dylan, who is visibly distressed. Ashel continues her energetic rampage, rapidly breaking several wooden structures with impressive force. Dylan stares at the destruction, utterly dumbfounded by the power of that tiny thing. Ashel chirps Baya once more, full of zest, leaving Dylan bewildered and questioning internally, why is it so strong?